Also realizing that from what you just said, my mind was like, well, publishing sounds like it's gotten more expensive too, or at least more involved, and that usually means more expensive.
It's certainly gotten more complex. I think, and I'm sure anybody in marketing would say, I'm sure it's true across multiple industries, but I mean, um, you know, the like what social media platforms are most important for your specific genre is something that people have to worry about now. Like very, very targeted. I think as the competition has increased, then the ability to like dial in more and more specifically on a niche and an audience has also increased. And so that creates a need for more and more specialization, a greater understanding of different marketing opportunities and ecosystems. And to your point, not necessarily more expensive. It's certainly more expensive from a traditional user acquisition, like just a dollar for dollar, but more complex and a needing for more a variety of specializations depending on what the game is.
Yeah, I remember talking to someone, they said something like, where you used to spend a big bunch of money being like a main show at a serious expo or something. Now that money, like you don't even worry about that at all because that's not where your audience is. You instead, I'm going to go and like invest that money into the community, into my Discord server, into the social media or whatever over a much longer period of time. Okay, so definitely higher complexity. Um, all right, if that's so that made me kind of think about this idea of was there a point when that model of the publisher comes in at the last third to kind of, do the marketing and, whatever, push it out. Was there a time when that was actually like that made a lot of sense where it was because there was less competition in the market, because the publishing was simpler than it is today in some ways, that like, yeah, we're going to build the game, we're going to get to a point, and then publishing is, to your point, has probably been funding it this all along, but probably has been fairly hands off. And then we get to the point where we go, okay, got it. We've hit a threshold now where publishing is going to start being involved and is going to ramp involvement until we actually go. Did that used to make sense more than it does today?
Yeah, for sure. It's like in the early days of 20 years ago, and it's just like a big monolithic release, and you just throw a bunch of money behind an announcement campaign and a launch campaign. I think that began to evolve as digital distribution became sort of overtook physical distribution. So you're no longer like driving for key, like specific moments, but you're like building this momentum over time. And then you add on to the different ways that we consume marketing now. There are still definitely like really cool billboards, I'm sure, in New York City, but most of us are getting our marketing exposure like through the social media platforms that we're on.
Right, right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
once
I
upon
do.
a time.
I do remember I lived in I don't no longer live in LA. I lived in LA for 8 years, and I just remember when I got there thinking, oh my gosh, there are so many billboards on
Yeah,
everything. Like
I
it's
feel the
just
same
giant.
way. It's
Yeah,
like, what,
it's
what do they want us to care about? Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And there, you'll see big game like a big Call of Duty on top of the mall that's nearby my house. I'm like, who goes to a mall? And then you find out in LA a lot of people go to a mall. But there's just and the highway goes by it and like it was so weird to me because not what I was used to. And then you get used to it and then you go somewhere else and you're like, wow, there's no billboards anywhere.
Yeah.
So different. But okay. So so that's kind of been an evolution over time of what publishing is to the point where now in both descriptions you were saying like, look, earlier on, you need to be thinking about this, you need to be aware of it because publishing it's funny, I almost view it as because I've actually told game dev teams like, hey, you need to go start building your community. Like
Right.
you're just starting off, you go, but and I didn't necessarily think about like I'm asking them to do what was classically a publishing function.
Right. Right.
It's just like this is just the evolution now. And to your point around maybe the embedded and more integrated model being more successful is that there is sort of this, hey, can we align on the goals and then just see this as like this is all the pieces that are involved in shipping a successful game. In game and software development, we spend so much time estimating, and it often feels like a burden that just takes a bunch of time but doesn't really add much value. My name is Benjamin Karsage. I've created a course called Advanced Estimation for Game and Software Development. This is actually something people out there asked for when I was looking at what would be helpful to you, what course could I build. estimation was the number one thing you picked. And I can understand why. Everywhere I've gone in our industry and in software generally, I see teams struggling with estimation, fighting with a sense of false precision, and generally going through the motions rather than really getting value out of all the time they're spending. And in my time, both in the military, in software development, and game development, I've been able to successfully predict the completion of large projects. I've seen other people do the same, and so I know it is possible. If you want to be doing that for your team, if you want to be advancing your understanding of estimation and how it can help you, this course is for you. A quick overview of what we cover. We start by discussing the state of estimation today, why it's so challenging, and why are we all doing it and continuing to do it even though it doesn't seem to add that much value. Second, we talk about calibration, how we can become better calibrated estimators and train others to be the same. Third, we talk about how to get ready to estimate. Who should be estimating? What are we actually estimating? How do we set up ourselves to succeed and to avoid the individual biases and fallacies that prevent our estimates from being good? Finally, at least for early access, we talk about tools, techniques, the approach. What are the ways that you can actually create estimates that add value? And when should you not use those techniques and use others instead? In the future, we're going to be releasing even more modules where we cover things like how to estimate things that aren't just how long a project might take, but to think about money and resources and so many other things that we end up estimating, value and whatnot. The 6th and 7th modules talk about small and large scale estimation and really try to make all of what we've talked about so far practical. And those modules will be coming in the future. For right now, we're focusing on those first 4. And as a result, we're keeping this course in early access at a lower price. As more modules come out, that price will go up. So get it today while it is as low as it'll be, and you will get all the future sections as well as those first 4. It's already 15 hours of content and more than 20 worksheets, templates, and examples for you to take away. I also interject stories from my own experiences, both failures and successes, of how estimation has gone well and poorly and what you might be able to learn from those things. So there's a lot of tools here, there's a lot of resources. This is a problem we're all facing because we all spend so much time doing this, and I think we get way too little value out of it. I think we could be spending less time and getting more value and really helping our teams succeed, creating the software, the games that will really please our audience and players. If that's something you're interested in, check out the course.
I guess the thing I'll add to that, you asked about like what makes these relationships like positive versus less positive. I think that the opportunity in having that shared goal is having a shared approach also with like, this is a complex and ever evolving ecosystem that we're in. So we're going to try things and test things and learn and pivot. Like there is not a one size fits all. Here is your marketing plan. Then these things are going to all execute exactly as, in the way that we think they will. Just like there's not a game development production plan you see at first playable that is going to totally hold up and like reach the goals as articulated at that time and place, like that you agree to that plan. So having a shared understanding of like the shared goals and a collaborative, iterative approach to like finding that audience and testing that audience and learning more about the game and how it resonates and what works and what doesn't. I've seen, the yucky side of a publisher developer relationship is like the publisher doesn't really, the feeling from the developer that the publisher doesn't really care or understand their game. And the truth is, I've only seen publishers that care a lot and try a lot of things, and it doesn't always work because things are crazy and changing and complex. And things oftentimes you think would make a lot of sense, like just don't move the needle. And you can do things really, really well and still not succeed. So it's tough out there.
I feel so bad. I'm going to pick on Concord again. One of the things you were talking about is that both that customization and the relationship between the publisher and the dev, and that you're trying to pick the right set of things to solve the problem that this particular game has for its particular audience at this particular moment of time. And an interesting thing for me from the outside, not being a publisher, so I'm curious your take on this. When I saw Concord go out, it was this very large, some people have said like that's the most money entertainment has ever burned in one shot, right? Just like this did not work. And I talked with somebody who is closely related to that, and they said Sony was a fantastic publisher. They said like this wasn't, you can't go blame Sony for this. But what they meant was that Sony provided money, space, room, and was very hands off. And the thing I remember thinking is that's fascinating because, isn't that, well, that's what we want. We want the hands off publisher, but is it?
Right.
And one more thing beyond that is when I saw the Concord go to market as a consumer, as somebody who likes playing shooters, was somewhat interested in like, well, is this going to be a cool game? I wasn't sure. I'm not really that much into the hero shooter stuff, but like, it could work out. I remember watching it and going, you're marketing a live service PvP experience as if it's like an open world single player experience. It
Hmm.
felt very strange to me. So that's my take. Curious what you saw, if you don't mind like diving into that or other examples of like when you've seen this kind of go sideways.
Um, I don't have any sort of firsthand experience with that game, but I think in general, we didn't see the modern, like holistic community building as that largely community-based game came to market, um, to help sort of validate early assumptions. When I think of the game development or game development process, which to me like includes publishing, you have a hypothesis. Like I am making this game for this audience within these constraints in order to derive this outcome. Like that's sort of your hypothesis, right? I'm going to
Hmm.
make this hero shooter that's going to appeal to these people, and there's this many of them. And if I'm right, and I can do it within this time frame, aka your budget, like it maths, and we all get jobs. We all get to keep working, right? Like that's kind
Hmm.
of like the agreement that we're all entering in when we make a game. And I think the hands-off developer or hands-off publisher approach is not putting their bits into that hypothesis. So the hypothesis in that case is only I am making the shooter this or this game for this audience. And there's not the process in place to validate like, does this audience like that? Um, like, are we speaking to them? Is our messaging and our marketing materials like resonating with them? Like, am I validating my hypothesis or not? Like, and if I'm not, what do I do about that? Like, what is my opportunity to learn from that and continue to change either on the dev side or the publishing side or both? And
Hmm.
so, to your point on like publishing being hands off actually can be a negative. I think like it's so important to have that shared goal, that hypothesis. I've seen others describe it as like, yeah, your thesis, but like that is the frame under which everybody's operating. And if you're not clear about that frame on both sides, then you're not going to be aligned toward the same goals and shit can just fall apart.
Hmm. I'm very much appreciating this conversation just because it's again, even that simple thing you said of you're not just making this game for this audience, you're making this game for this audience at this period of time, and are they interested? Like there's a set
Right.
of stuff again that in the modern world you could say, well, an indie team has to kind of solve all that stuff themselves, and there's truth in that. But that's what the publisher's there to do, especially when it does get into these very large games. If you lead teams in game or software development and you're tired of wasteful and unreliable estimation, I've built an online course just for you. It's called Advanced Estimation for Game and Software Development, and it's a self-paced course with over 15 hours of content, real-world examples, and tools you can start using right away. Estimation doesn't have to be a morale-draining mess. Planning doesn't have to feel unrealistic and contrived. You can do better, and this course will help. Early access is now open with lifetime access and a big launch discount, but there's limited seats at this price point. Check it out at this URL or in the show notes below.